So thanks again, everyone, for joining. While you're answering the quick poll, that just for us to know a bit more about you and how familiar you are with the principle. You can see normally the agenda for today. So that's the third workshop of a series of workshops organized by the ENEFIRST Plus project to discuss the implementation of the energy efficiency first principle. And today we will discuss more specifically the case of heating and cooling plants. We will start by looking at that from a EU perspective with Margot Pinault from the European Commission and my colleague Margot Peretto. And then we will have feedback from concrete examples from national and regional level with Christos Toukolias from the Greek agency CRES and Claire Forret from the French agency ADEME. And after that, we will continue the discussion in a panel and welcome as well Stan Merce from the Joseph Stefan Institute in Slovenia. And Stan is also the domain coordinator about heating and cooling at the Concerted Action for the Energy Efficiency Directive. Briefly, before we go into that, a reminder about the ENEFIRST Plus project. That's the continuation of the previous ENEFIRST project that was more research-oriented and focused on the building sector. ENEFIRST Plus is more focused on implementation, and it covers potentially all end-use sectors, as well as the supply of energy. And the main approach we have in ENEFIRST Plus is that we start from the current practices of stakeholders. So we think that energy efficiency first should not be considered as a parallel process, but should really be integrated in current practices and current processes, for decision making and planning. And that's what we phrase with plugging energy efficiency first in different processes like heating and cooling plants, for example. The policy background, I will be very quick, as I think most of you are aware of that. I will just highlight for today that in the recast of the Energy Efficiency Directive that was adopted in September 2023, in the Article 25 that deals with heating and cooling plants and supply, there are now more explicit references to the fact that the comprehensive assessment and the local heating and cooling plants should align with the energy efficiency first principle. And I will put the link to the report later on in the chat for a more detailed analysis about the background. Very quickly about how we see the implementation of the energy efficiency first principle in general, so not only for heating and cooling, but in general. We try to summarize that in three main points. The first one is how the discussion is framed. Second one, how options are assessed and compared. And the third one, how the decision is made and justified. So very quickly, how the discussion is framed, why we raise that point, because sometimes in the debates about energy policy, the focus tends to be much more on the technology options for the energy supply, the supply of energy, while we think that the energy efficiency first principle calls for starting from the needs, and especially having a good knowledge about the energy efficiency potentials, and then at the same time having also a good knowledge about the potentials for renewable energy sources, and looking at how the two can be matched and optimized, which also refers to the needs in infrastructure, and I will come back to that in the second point. And only once you have done that, you look for the remaining decarbonization options to cover what is left. The second point is how options are assessed or compared. So once the discussion starts, to provide an evidence base for the policy making. And here there are two main points. One is to use a systemic approach, and the second one is to have a broader scope of analysis, so not looking only at the competitiveness of energy prices. So the first point set by the principle is that energy efficiency and demand-side flexibility should be considered energy resources, which means on a level playing field with supply-side options, so considering the energy system as a whole. The second point, as just said, that's to consider also the needs in energy infrastructures, and again, how demand-side flexibility can help, and also energy efficiency can help for the security of energy supply, which means for the energy efficiency community, not only considering the quantity of energy saved, but also when and where it is used, and that's the same for the energy supply, when and where it is generated, and that's related also to the topics of flexibility and adequacy. And in terms of assessment, that means that when assessing the cost and benefits of energy efficiency investment, for example, that's very useful to consider the avoided cost in terms of capacity and network infrastructures. And the last point about the scope of analysis, that's now even more explicitly explained in Article 3 of the EED, that the CBA, but also the type of assessment should consider wider benefits, or here we speak about multiple impacts. So the avoided cost, for example, of network infrastructure is one, but you have also obviously the reduction in greenhouse gases emissions, health impact, and so on. And at the same time, also considering a long-term perspective with the long-term goal of climate neutrality by 2050 to avoid stranded assets. And the third point, that once you have discussed, assessed, that's to make the decision, how the decision is made and justified. And here I would summarize that with this expression of reversing the burden of proof. The literature is increasingly growing with papers and reports showing that the energy efficiency and renewable investments have a more positive impact than other options to meet the energy and climate goals. So that's up to the other type of investment to demonstrate that maybe in some specific cases they can be more beneficial and not the reverse. And also another point is to acknowledge the complementarity between energy efficiency and renewables. Coming back to the project objectives, what we do in ENEFIRST Plus, we develop processes to support the implementation of the principle, and in parallel we demonstrate how it can be done, the implementation of the principle with pilot cases, and you will hear about one today, and that's also complemented with peer-to-peer activities to share experience and grow the community of practice. So here you have an overview of the first pilot cases done in the first half of the project. The Italian and Polish one have been presented in October, so you can find that in the resources of the platform. And today, Christos will present the Greek one. And next month, in December, the Croatian one will be presented together with the new resources on cost-benefit analysis. So that's on the 17th of December, and we will put the registration link in the chat. You can see here a screenshot of the platform, efirst.eu, where you can find in the resources the proceedings of the previous workshops, as well as the reports, and in events, the announcement of the next workshops. That's it for me. Let's come back and enter into the real presentations of the workshop today, and I'm happy to hand it over to Margot for a reminder about the EU framework for heating and cooling. Margot, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jean-Sébastien, and I will share my screen. I hope it is coming. And yeah, please let me know.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, super. So I will present
but it's not yet in full screen, so.
Yeah, yes, okay.
Perfect.
Good, thanks. So indeed, I will present the current policy context where we at the Commission are working on a number of new policy initiatives foreseen in the first quarter 2026 with the specific focus on the heating and cooling strategy of relevance for our discussion today, and also what will follow because the strategy will be a communication from the Commission, but then we would like to do some more specific actions to follow up. So the context on heating and cooling is probably well known to you. I would like to highlight one thing, that in heating and cooling transition, we are somehow lagging behind electricity because the share of renewable energy sources in heating and cooling is still low. And when we look more in detail, what are the renewable energy sources is mainly biomass, which is 80% in total. And if looking in district heating, I think it's even more. And one more striking, let's say, element of this context is that waste heat represents nearly 30% of the total EU energy demand when accounting broadly waste heat from various sources, not strictly related to the more narrow definition that exists, but broadly where thermal energy is not used and is released to the ambience without being used. So this is something that is quite a challenge and also a potential for further efficiency gains at system level if we will be able to manage this waste heat for heating and cooling purposes. So tapping in the potential of energy efficiency and also, of course, accelerating the transition to phase out fossil fuels and to move to clean heating and cooling technologies, sources, and supply options is the main objective of the upcoming heating and cooling strategy, while having in mind, of course, affordability for households, because heating in Europe is a very large share of households' budget. That's the type of climate we have in Europe. We have long winters, sometimes very, very cold. So indeed, affordability is directly linked. Affordability of energy is directly linked with household spending on heating and cooling in the future, probably. It is also related to resilience of our energy system and its security. This slide shows a very big diversity of heating and cooling systems and heating and cooling in general in Europe, where share of renewables can be relatively high in some Nordic countries and relatively low, for example, in Belgium. And this is just showing the diversity, which is linked to very much traditional choices of how heating and cooling can be supplied, and of course linked to the infrastructure and fuels that are at the disposal of households. A few words about the regulatory framework, of course, stressing the Article 25, which is about heating and cooling planning and assessment. Assessment at national level is something that was already in the previous version of the directive, so it's an regular exercise that member states are delivering to the Commission under the form of comprehensive assessments of heating and cooling done at national level. And in these assessments, they are required to look at efficiency potentials in heating and cooling, such as development of district heating, waste heat recovery, cogeneration, high efficiency cogeneration. That's how this framework was set in the past. Now probably we'll be also looking towards also different look into this heating and cooling assessments. What is important that now they are fully integrated in the national energy and climate plans. So heating and cooling is and should be assessed within this framework of national energy and climate plans. And the second element, which is of course discussed today with you, is this local heating and cooling plans, which is a new requirement for local public authorities. For all the municipalities above 45,000 inhabitants. That's what the directive says. And there are not many details on how these plans should be prepared so far in the directive, and the Commission didn't issue yet any guidance on this article. One important element, of course, that is the subject of our discussion today is energy efficiency first principle, which is clearly, as Jean-Sébastien highlighted, clearly set as the guiding principle for development of these plans at local level. And this is crucial because indeed through these provisions, the EU tries to empower the local level to make the best choices in terms of efficiency and availability of clean heating sources, infrastructure, technologies, to ensure heating and cooling transition in their territories. So it's a very, very powerful provision empowering the local level, but also providing this guiding principle that energy efficiency should be the main criteria of choices. The other article that is of importance for heating and cooling under in the Energy Efficiency Directive is related to district heating, where the definition of efficient district heating and cooling that is evolving throughout the years is ensuring also the decarbonization of this sector and of these systems of district heating and cooling systems, because it foresee steps of increasing the supply of renewable energy sources in the overall heat supply to district heating. And as you can see, in 2050, the full heat supply in district heating should be based on renewable energy sources or waste heat. So that's the transition towards decarbonization, phasing out of fossil fuels that is set in this definition. Moreover, the operators of district heating and cooling systems need to develop conversion plans, how to achieve this or how to set this process according to the definition and achieve the compliance with the definition. This is for obligatory for all the systems above 5 megawatt of heat output. In addition, in the same article, but not related to district heating specifically, there are cost-benefit analysis which are mandatory for waste heat recovery in industry and in services, also in data centers. So that's another part of the article. It's linked, but it's not directly setting the conditions for district heating. And then we have the regulatory framework for heating and cooling in the Renewable Energy Directive that sets the targets for the renewable energy share in renewable energy sources share in heating and cooling that need to increase as of next year at the rhythm of 1.1% per year. And also waste heat could to some level contribute to this target, to reaching this target of renewable energy sources in heating and cooling. And Article 24 is setting such a target for specifically for district heating and cooling. And this one is non-binding, but is already corresponding to the definition in the EED of efficient district heating and cooling. So therefore it is it works together as a framework for district heating. So yes, having said that, all this, I would like to come back to the heating and cooling strategy, which was proposed in the Action Plan for Affordable Energy, because we have this good regulatory framework that needs to be now implemented on the ground effectively. And the heating and cooling strategy was proposed together with Electrification Action Plan, because heat needs to be looked at specifically beyond electrification. Electrification is, of course, the main process. Electrification of end users is the main process how decarbonization can be achieved in end use sectors. Still, heat deserves attention as at a local level, an energy carrier on its own rights, which has its own infrastructure, its own capacity of storage, its own capacity of flexibility provision to the electricity system. And that's why heating and cooling strategy should, as complementary to Electrification Action Plan, was proposed in this framework. And as said, we are developing it in parallel, time-wise, and we try to strengthen the consistency and complementarity and the interlinkages between electricity and heat so that they work together as, hand in hand decarbonization vectors. And locally, they can be very, very complementary. So yes, indeed, our aim is to promote local, affordable, clean heat sources, using the full potential of thermal-based flexibility, thermal storage for electricity system, for especially distribution level electricity system, because all of this works at local level. And then increasing efficiency gains within the system, within the energy system, local energy system, by better integration of waste heat. And of course, acceleration of deployment of clean heat technologies, such as heat pumps, such as geothermal, thermal storage, district heating. So depending on what are the choices made locally, there are various options, and the local heating and cooling plans should be advising on these options, how to best, what are the best choices. But the overarching framework, which I presented you before, is set in many pieces of legislation, and that's the complexity probably also for the local level planners and decision makers, because we have these provisions, as you saw in the red in the EED, but also there are of course relevant provisions in the EPBD, looking from an energy performance of buildings perspective and phasing out of fossil fuels in heating, in building heating systems, eco design, looking at product specific measures, and all of this adds a complexity for local decision makers. So probably one of the main objectives of the heating and cooling strategy is to bring this rich regulatory framework together and explain how this links and how it should be guided by energy efficiency first principle. So yeah, this repeats more or less what I said already, but indeed, we would like to achieve through this strategy a vision for efficient system, an energy efficient system, through better local planning of heating and cooling, which takes into account evolution of the building stock performance and decarbonization of heating systems in buildings, but also beyond buildings. I mean, through district heating systems, this is included. Thermal-based flexibility and thermal storage that can locally play an important role in local electricity systems, and this is in common with electrification action plan. Waste heat recovery, so remove the regulatory barriers, strengthen the business case, map the potential. All this needs also an empowered local action, because there are barriers that can only be removed at local level, because they are typically organizational. Wherever the business case and the de-risking instruments is needed, probably we could look more broadly which instruments would be relevant for that, but then the specific cooperation needs to be organized at local level between the waste heat providers and district heating systems or other users. And of course, energy efficiency in end use, so in buildings or in industry, needs to be prioritized, because we need to start by reducing the demand before assessing all the different supply options, but also the supply options need to be assessed according to efficiency at system level. And then the second objective is to accelerate the deployment of clean heat technologies and clean heat sources. So deployment of heat maps, geothermal, solar thermal, district heating, all of this, and the specific conditions for that. The timeline, we already almost closed the public consultation. It's tomorrow. And in the next step, we will we started drafting, of course, at the Commission, and in the next steps, these are only procedural steps internally. Inter-service consultation will be somewhere between January and February, and the adoption of the strategy somewhere in March, rather by the end of March. So that's everything from my side, and I will stop sharing here.
Thanks a lot, Margot. That was very clear, and I think yes, you reminded very well the major importance of heating and cooling in the energy balance, and we can see that that this is why it's in focus for the upcoming policy development. So we are looking forward to the publication of the strategy next year, and I think that also makes it clear that it's very timely to discuss the implementation of energy efficiency first in heating and cooling, which makes a nice transition with the next presentation by my colleague Margot Peretto, who will provide some insights about what we've discussed in the project, about how the principle can be implemented, especially in comprehensive assessment that Margot already introduced. Margot, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Jean-Sébastien. Let me just share the slides. Okay, so yeah, as my colleague Jean-Sébastien just mentioned, I'll be talking on, let's say, how to integrate the energy efficiency first principle within the heating and cooling plans. I just wanted to start with, again, some background that was already mentioned by Margot, but just, yeah, quickly to refresh. So at national level, indeed, we have the comprehensive assessments, which are mentioned in the Energy Efficiency Directive, and at local level, the heating and cooling plans for municipalities with a population over 45,000 people. Something I wanted to add is that both provisions refer to energy efficiency first, as in Article 25, it is mentioned that the cost-benefit analysis need to take into account this principle, and that heating and cooling plans should provide an estimate and mapping of the potential to increase energy efficiency and be compliant with the energy efficiency first principle. However, there is a need for data in order to do this. And additionally, yeah, the Article 5 in the Energy Efficiency Directive mentions that we need to include energy efficiency measures in local planning, making this provision, of course, very relevant for this. And the National Building Renovation Plans, which are actually required by Article 3 of the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, also explicitly say that there's a need to provide inputs about space heating demand and how it may evolve. Lastly, the assessment of the potential of renewable energy sources for heating and cooling is required by the Renewables Energy Directive, which complements the comprehensive assessments dealing with supply efficiency with data about decarbonizing heating and cooling supply. If you would like to have more details about this, you can check out Chapter 4 of the Needs Assessment and Compilation of Existing Resources for the implementation of the principle that was developed as part of this project. And maybe, yeah, we can add the link in the chat later. So, as you have noticed, I have mentioned, let's say, three big legislative documents, the three directives being the energy efficiency one, the energy performance of buildings, and renewable energy. All these three are essential elements that then are, let's say, plugged into the national energy and climate plans, which is, let's say, the overall planning of the whole energy system. How? So the before called long-term renovation strategies, now National Building Renovation Plans, are mentioned in the EPBD, requiring options for reducing the demand. Then we have the comprehensive assessments mentioned in the Energy Efficiency Directive, which mention options for supply efficiency plus demand in other end-use sectors such as industry. And then the third element, the potential of renewable energy sources, which provide us options for decarbonizing. These three directives match in, let's say, carrying out the achievement of the same objective. However, in practice, these connections are or an iterative process and not at all a linear one. And here I want to show how an energy efficiency first assessment could look like. And the very first step would be starting from the current demand, so with heating and cooling maps. And on one side, having data on the building stock, coming from the building renovation plans, with the new draft version due by the end of the year. And on the other side, we have data on heating and cooling in other sectors such as industry, coming from the comprehensive assessments, which, in theory, were already due by 30 June 2024. So starting from the demand, I wanted to show the next slide, which is actually taken from a report of made in the ENEFIRST project. So let's say the first version of ENEFIRST Plus, where it was compared the cost in terms of billion euros for a low efficient scenario and a medium efficient one and a high efficiency one. So looking at the two graphs, you can see on the left hand side, the first bar is the costs when adopting a low efficiency, let's say, approach. And on the very right hand side, the last rectangle on top is the cost with a medium efficiency scenario, and below with a high efficiency scenario. And so if we focus on the bottom graph, we can see the difference between the low efficiency and the high efficiency is of around 115 billion euros, which might sound like a lot, but actually you have to take into account that this is for all of the EU for a timeline over 10 years. So we can see that actually with not a big improvement also in terms of percentages, we see a very high difference in the energy needed for heating systems, for fuel costs, for district heating generation, for electricity generation, and for electricity networks. With very important also to notice the negative externalities remaining zero in both cases. And I think this greatly shows how powerful energy efficiency is, as investing in such practices really reduces all the the negative externalities we actually want to reduce, in this case being fuel costs, energy produced, and electricity produced, and all the stress on the network. But so coming back to before, this was when looking at demand efficiency. Then the next step would be to go on the solutions available. What do we have? Again, taking data on energy efficiency options from the building plans and data on supply options from the comprehensive assessments. And here comes the crucial part. Thereafter, we compare through cost-benefit analysis in different scenarios, essentially how to match the supply and demand request. And we do this by implementing the energy efficiency first principle, so looking at different energy efficiency options and expanding the scope of assessment to also include multiple impacts. And the last step is making it happen, so supporting and promoting the most beneficial options. This means revising, complementing the policy measures to align the incentives and support with the results. And for this part, but also for the data supply options, we get the inputs from the assessment of renewable energy potential, as energy efficiency and renewable energy go hand in hand. Now, moving on to the comprehensive assessments specifically, which are found in Annex 10 of the Energy Efficiency Directive. Here we can find a forecast of heating and cooling demand trends, considering projections for the next 10 years, linking with the National Building Renovation Plans and future changes in demand in the industry and building sectors. And also here the heat maps are mentioned in the scenarios. So the cost-benefit analysis should be focused on supply options, and there's a need to cross with cost-benefit analysis of demand-side options in the building renovation plans. And finally, the review of current policies and measures, align these with the results from the cost-benefit analysis. Now, focusing on the comprehensive assessments, the first part is the overview of heating and cooling. So looking at the heating and cooling demand and supply through the maps and asking ourselves what is the status quo, and then the forecast of trends. How will it evolve? Yeah, and let's say the general question in this case regarding energy efficiency would be to what extent energy efficiency improvements are considered. Next, we will move to the objectives with existing strategies and policy measures and seeing how these are currently addressed. Again, from an energy efficiency perspective, we ask ourselves, are current policies promoting the most beneficial options and are these aligned with long-term goals? The next step would be the analysis of the economic potential for efficiency in heating and cooling using the cost-benefit analysis, comparing the different options, and Christos will show us this for the Greek pilot case. And again, from the energy efficiency perspective, yeah, we need to include demand-side options assessed in the building renovation plans and consider multiple impacts in the scope of analysis. Oops. And finally, potential new strategies and policy measures. What is the new plan? How can the most beneficial actions or groups of actions be promoted and or prioritized? And then moving really at the local level, the comprehensive assessments were at the national, as mentioned at the beginning. Here in the local ones, which again is a bit fuzzy how these should be done, as also mentioned by Margot. Essentially here we can make use of data from comprehensive assessments, the building renovation plans, and the renewables, renewable energy sources mapping. So again, going back to the three directives mentioned. And local planning can go more in detail for integration. However, the problem when going on local level is that there's often uneven resources depending on the areas. So large cities will have more resources, more interest than rural municipalities. However, regions do have an important supporting and coordinating role. And if you want more details about this, you can check out the ENEFIRST project that IEECP is also coordinating, that actually just finished. So that was the first part of the presentation. Now I want to talk about some resources we have found, as you know, these heating and cooling plans are not always the easiest to do. And so we thought of illustrating various online tools and reports, which you can find the hyperlinks in the presentations that will be made available after the workshop. So yeah, here now I'll just go quickly through them. The first one is CityWatts, which is an open source mapping and planning tool for heating and cooling. Then we have the ENER Maps project that developed an open source data set covering all member states with data on climate conditions, heating energy demand from buildings, emissions, renewable energy generation, etc. Then we have the Heat Roadmap Europe project which developed low carbon heating and cooling strategies at the national level, and an online pan-European thermal atlas called PETA for heating and cooling demand in Europe. Yeah, then various tools are available to model and assess the energy demand of buildings and building stocks, such as the Invert EE Lab or the DREAM model. More specifically about local heating and cooling plants, Energy Cities developed a tracker providing a state of play in this field in the EU member states. Then a first project, so the previous version of the current project developed guidelines to implement the principle with integrated approaches for buildings and related energy systems with different scenarios. Yeah, then we have Thermos, which is an open source database with high resolution European energy mapping, CitySim Pro, another open source tool able to simulate energy consumption of buildings, and CityBus, which produces analysis at high scale through the simulation engine of Energy Plus using the CityGML data format. And then we have SimStat, UMI, and Apache, which are to be used more at local level and require commercial license. And finally, the Reward Heat project developed an Excel-based tool for energy, economic, and environmental assessments focused on district heating and cooling. And the So What project developed a tool for auditing industrial process, planning, and simulation of waste heat and cold valorization systems. Then, focused on cooling specifically, we have the Cool Life project, which produced an online tool which provides data on cooling demand, broad range of solutions relevant to the location, and policies and financing schemes in each country, with Austria being one of the pilot cases for which it was compared different scenarios for cooling. And it was found that passive measures are more cost effective than uncontrolled growth in AC, air conditioning. And then we have some other resources that are studies and reports, more academic, which you can find in the slides later on. So to conclude, the energy efficiency first principle will play a key role in the path to decarbonization. Energy efficiency should start with assessing the energy efficiency options available. An integrated approach is essential to optimize the energy system. It is possible to start comparisons with data already available and then improve where uncertainties may change decisions. And finally, heating and cooling plants need to be delineated considering long-term cost-efficient strategies. That is it from my side. I hope you found it insightful, and if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Marco. That was a lot of information to present in a short time, and you made it very well. I hope it was not too dense for the participant. Please answer the quick questions before we move to the presentation of Christos. So we will move from theory to practice with the Greek pilot case. In the meantime, Christos, you can maybe already share your screen. And yes, for the question, please feel free to add your questions in the chat or in the Q&A panel, and we will come back to that in the panel discussion. And Christos, yes, feel free to start.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Sébastien. I suppose that you can see my screen, correct?
Yes, we can see the slide full screen. Perfect.
I'm very happy that I will present the actual results of our attempt in order, as Marco said, to apply energy efficiency first principle in a real case for assessing the different local heating and cooling plants in Greece. As you know, I'm energy policy expert at CRES, and as CRES we have undertaken as a technical advisor of the Ministry of Environment and Energy, the preparation of different action plans, including the National Energy Climate Plans and the comprehensive assessment. So yes, we have experience in conducting CBA. So in this project, we have the opportunity in order to see how this principle can be actually applied in order to design heating and cooling strategies, in order to be incorporated into the comprehensive assessment. I have to say that now we are in the process of updating the previous comprehensive assessment based on the provisions of the last revised National Energy Climate Plan, which was submitted in the previous August 2024. And generally, we want, with this case study, to obtain the appropriate experience and knowledge in order to apply effectively this principle and to this methodology to be used in order to develop also local heating and cooling plan, because now we are in the process on harmonizing the directive and we have started, let's say, a few preparatory activities for them. And finally, the ultimate target is, let's say, to incorporate all this approach into the National Energy Climate Plan in order this principle to be taken into consideration. What we have decided in this pilot case is to see if the energy efficiency solutions and RES options, RES technology, should be promoted in order to replace the actual, let's say, provisions for investments in natural gas and other conventional fuel infrastructure. And we have a twofold target. First of all, not to avoid stranded asset, and generally to promote the social welfare, which must be, let's say, the actual and ultimate results of all the policies. And to see if the potential negative consequences of this, let's say, baseline conventional, let's say, fuels can affect the social welfare. So this is the first target. But moreover, with the utilization of this approach, we want, let's say, somehow to rank and to assess all the different demand side resources options that we have in order to select the most beneficial for the society. And this is a very crucial and fundamental target for me, because as member of the team that has been prepared the National Energy Climate Plan, we know that the solution we select, let's say, the policies, the technologies based on the least cost solution. So in any case, we have the question if our choices are correct, or we should select the options, the technologies, the policy measures that maximize social welfare. So in order to let's say, to apply, to implement our pilot cases, we decided, as it's foreseen in Article 3, to conduct a cost-benefit analysis. I have to admit that, okay, we have the experience since in the previous comprehensive assessment, we have already implemented this approach. So yes, we wanted somehow to use and to update, let's say, the implementation of this analysis in order to be fully aligned with the provisions of Article 3 of the new EED. So as you can see, we decided to use the methodology which was proposed by the European Commission to the Member State in order to conduct the comprehensive assessment, and we decided to intervene in specific section of this methodology in order to become, let's say, applicable the energy efficiency first principle. So, and as you can see, we determined a typical sequence of steps which must be carried out in order to conduct this cost-benefit analysis. Very quickly, in the first step, we have to specify the geographical and system boundaries. Okay, now we are referring to the national comprehensive assessment, so we are focused on the national level, but obviously this analysis can be easily adapted in order to focus either on the regional or local level. Then we have to identify all the potential applicable energy efficiency options, and then to select the conventional baseline, let's say, technologies and options which are foreseen currently in the in our energy climate plans. Then we have to select from the initially identified energy efficiency option steps to the most, let's say, feasible from technical perspective mainly, in order to continue to the next steps. For the technologies that have been selected in the fourth step, we try to quantify and monetize all the triggered cost and benefits, because our objective was to conduct a cost-benefit analysis, so everything should be expressed in monetized terms. In the next steps, we have the conduction of the financial CBA, because we wanted, first of all, to take into account the investor perspective and to see if the conventional discount cash flow approach leads to positive returns. Then, after the conduction of the financial analysis, we conduct the economic CBA in order to take into account the society perspective and to see if the integration of these socioeconomic and environmental factors and parameters are capable to maximize the social welfare. Obviously, the conduction of sensitivity analysis is essential part of this methodology in order to be certain that the potential fluctuation in the input data will not affect considerably the concluded remarks by the analysis, and then the combination of the results from the financial CBA and the economic CBA can provide us very valuable insights in order to design the appropriate policy measures in order to fulfill, let's say, the target of the plan, which is, let's say, to promote the efficient heating and cooling. Another significant, let's say, contribution of our methodology is the actual involvement of the stakeholders, because we do not want only to organize a simple consultation approach, but we wanted with the actual implementation of the stakeholders to co-design and after the preparation of the plan to co-implement all these policies measures, because with this way we will maximize the possibilities for the plan to become effective. As you can see, very briefly, we're trying to identify and to persuade to participate stakeholders from all the body stakeholders, let's say, that are involved in the preparation of the heating and cooling plan. And we wanted this massive participation because it is the only way in order to understand what we are doing, what we want to achieve, and of course, to obtain the required knowledge and to create trust, because as you can see, trust is fundamental part for the effectiveness of this plan. Then we continue, let's say, with the technicalities in order to conduct the cost-benefit analysis. We selected typical buildings of the residential and tertiary sector constructed before 1980, which was the year that the first regulation of the energy performance of buildings was adopted. We examined and other, let's say, more effective buildings, but the focus was mainly on this. We try to identify the available amount of investment that is given for the selected, let's say, conventional of baseline fuels. Emphasis was given mainly on the natural gas, and we wanted also to see if the planned promotion of heat pumps is worth to be, let's say, promoted, and to see if this promotion should be streamlined and aligned with energy efficiency measures. After the conduction of the first steps, we decided to examine 11 different options. So one innovative point of our methodology was not only to focus on supply side measures, because, okay, we are focused on the heating and cooling plan. So yes, we evaluated heat pumps, we evaluated and our thermal and geothermal heat pumps, but we wanted to assess also and demand side options, such as interventions in the building envelope, to see the electricity production from photovoltaics, which is very effective, let's say, measure in Greece. And moreover, we assess the different combinations of all of these measures, and for this reason we resulted in 11 different options. The most difficult part was, first of all, to select the types of externalities that will be taken into account into the analysis. Yes, we examined all the categories, the types of externalities that are mentioned in Article 3, and we tried somehow, we managed to integrate all of them into our methodology. Emphasis was given, first of all, in order to avoid potential overlaps, not to double count, let's say, specific categories of externalities. And for this reason, we, let's say, standardized the approach. We determined specific types of externalities, and we select the value which was taken into consideration during the analysis. Very briefly, I will present you, let's say, the main categories and the main sources that we selected. For the case of environmental or air and health impact externalities, we used the values from the recently launched study from the European Commission, where provided data about the external costs from different electricity and heating production technologies. We wanted, in any case, to integrate into our analysis the macroeconomic benefits and the energy security. For this reason, we used a study from the comprehensive econometrics. And for all the other, let's say, multi-benefits, we selected the value of 10% from different studies. What we wanted was to, in order to be transparent what values have been used, we decided to select specific monetary values for these externalities in order to inform all the stakeholders about these values and to have, let's say, trust in the overall approach, where I think it's very critical in order to have a successful application of this principle. Okay, we, let's say, collect and the other remaining data. We received consumption data. We set as a period of analysis the period of 15 years because we want to assess the long-term impacts of these investments. In the case that the lifetime is longer, we assumed a residual value, and everything was recorded with, let's say, transparency about all these assumptions. In order to maximize, let's say, the effectiveness of this approach, we decided to run the analysis using an existing tool which has been developed by the Ministry of Environment and Energy, and it is used by the public authorities in order to prepare the action plans for the efficient renovations of the buildings. We made this decision because it is easier someone to persuade him in order to be familiar with this methodology if, let's say, an existing tool is used. So we decided to intervene into this tool in order to incorporate the input data that we have to take into consideration and to run this analysis using this tool. And very briefly, I will present you the outcomes of this CBA analysis, both for the examined technologies in the residential buildings and in buildings of the tertiary sector. As you can see here, we have, let's say, with a darker color, present the results of the financial analysis, and with a lighter, the economic analysis. A first conclusion is that economic analysis leads to higher benefit to cost ratio compared to the financial analysis. And it's very interesting that the only technologies that manage to have positive outcomes in the financial analysis is heat pumps and biomass boiler. It is interesting for the biomass boiler to see that the economic analysis leads to negative results. And this is very important because, as you can see, all the examined energy efficiency options have a positive benefit cost ratio, and take into consideration that the financial analysis leads to negative, the costs are higher compared to the benefits. This, let's say, comparison justify the potential provision of subsidy in order to improve the financial attractiveness of the energy efficiency intervention in the building envelope and to maximize social welfare. Generally, the installation of aerothermal heat pumps has the highest performance compared to all the other interventions, leading to the conclusion that they are able of maximize social welfare, while, as you can see with the combination of the intervention, we can see that if we combine aerothermal heat pumps and intervention in the building envelopes, the analysis leads us to slightly similar result, demonstrating that this combination is fully justified from the societal perspective. Moreover, for the heat pumps, we examined the option to satisfy only the heating demand because this is easiest and more convenient for the case of Greece, but we decided to run a scenario in order for the heat pumps to cover not only the heating, but to cover and the cooling demand. So we assumed a higher investments in order to substitute the distribution network system and to install a new one with the fan coils. And as you can see, the results of the economic analysis leads to similar, let's say, outcomes, demonstrating that the increased installation cost is counterbalanced by the increased benefits that we have through the coverage of the cooling needs. Somehow, the same results are confirmed also for the case of the application of the energy efficiency first principle in the tertiary sector. Again, the aerothermal heat pump seems to be the most beneficial from the societal perspective option, while the potential combination with intervention of the renovation of the building envelope leads to similarly same results. For the case of the buildings in the tertiary sector, we decided to examine two different scenarios. One scenario where the examined options will be compared using as a baseline fuel heating oil, and a second one electricity. And we can see that the societal performance of the natural gas is increased in the case that electricity is assumed as the baseline fuel, obviously due to the lower, let's say, environmental impacts that they will trigger compared to the electricity fuel. So this leads to the conclusion that's very critical to define correctly the baseline, let's say, input data which are needed, because the results can be differentiated considerably. So the main conclusion from this first general application of the energy efficiency first principle, yes, it is feasible to apply this principle, even if it seems that it is too complicated from, let's say, calculation perspective. Yes, it is applicable and it's feasible to apply. And moreover, it is confirmed for that cost-benefit analysis is a powerful in order to maximize social welfare, and perhaps we have to consider to change and to replace the based planning approach, which is based on the least cost solution, because, as I said, the main outcome of the policy measures should be the maximization of the social welfare. In any case, due to the fact that it is, let's say, a new obligation that all the stakeholders and especially policymakers have, it is important to improve the existing level of knowledge and, of course, to reduce the administrative burden, which can be, let's say, derived by the implementation of this principle. Moreover, due to the fact that we wanted, let's say, to facilitate the potential application and effectiveness of this approach for the preparation of the heating and cooling plan, we believe that for the comprehensive assessment and for the local heating and cooling plans, we managed to incorporate into the analysis a broader range of the considered options, not to focus only on the supply options, but to incorporate a demand such as insulation of the building envelope, on-site rest for self-consumption. It is crucial to, let's say, expand the framework for the assessed impacts, because it's critical for all the policies not to focus only on the economic impacts, but to incorporate and to take into account environmental and health impacts. We managed to run the analysis for a longer term perspective in order to see the cumulative impacts and to see if they can counterbalance the cost. And finally, we believe that we managed to improve somehow the procedural governance, let's say, is related with this principle, because with this standardization that we will manage, we provide transparency for all the calculations, and this participatory process is very effective in order to become, let's say, more effective all these results. And finally, as I mentioned, our intention is, let's say, to have this continuous interaction with all the policy documents. So these findings should be incorporated into the comprehensive assessment, to be incorporated into the National Energy Climate Plan, and with this, let's say, a continuous process to result in more effective policies. Obviously, we have challenges. As Marco said, we have to have, let's say, the appropriate data. We have to select the appropriate types of positive and negative externalities. We have to have tools in order to evaluate these non-market benefits and costs, and to have these, let's say, monetary estimates, values that are needed for the conduction of the cost-benefit analysis. And due to the fact that it's very the issue of energy poverty, it's very critical now, and with the preparation of the social climate plan, as it is needed by Article 3, we have to quantify the externalities related to the energy poverty and to assess the different distributional effects. So, in order to conclude, a few proposals from my side as resulted by the application of this principle in our policy case. I mentioned that, yes, it is feasible to run this analysis, and in any case, we have to disseminate the benefits from the implementation of this principle in order to create trust and to continue the application of this. It's crucial to standardize the approach. If we manage to standardize the approach, it will be easier to convince everyone to participate in this co-design process and to improve the understanding. It's critical to have this transparency. Targeted guidelines are needed about the required steps. It's not difficult to conduct cost-benefit analysis if all the data are available, and the utilization of the existing tools that we have in Greece, I think that facilitated the better understanding of our attempt. And due to the fact that, the real outcome of the CBA is to expand the framework and to integrate into the analysis different types of externalities, yes, it's very useful that we have a quantified estimate about the positive and negative externalities at EU level, but it's critical to have the national data, the national values, because the national impacts are affected by the conditions that exist in each country. So a similar study should be conducted in order to assess more correctly and more, let's say, realistically the quantified external cost and benefits. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Christos. I think that's a very good example of the second step about the assessment, and also we've seen very well the difference between financial and economic CBA, especially for biomass, which makes a nice transition to the next presentation. Just before we move to Claire, Christos, you can check in the Q&A panel. There is a quick clarification question to you. That's about whether the CBA included the operation and maintenance cost, and also if you considered degradation factor or decay rate in the performance of the technologies. As we are a bit late, if you can answer directly in the Q&A panel, that's super.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I'm inviting Claire Floret to present the ENEFIRST approach, which is very complementary to the Greek example. Now we move to how to design an incentive scheme to guide the decision. Claire, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jean-Sébastien. So first, I would like to explain to you what is ENEFIRST. So it was an approach that we developed in France, and more specifically in a specific area called Île-de-France. So it's Paris and the neighborhood. It is a tool intended for local authorities and also companies that have heating and renewable and recovery projects, either on the territory or at the level of a building. So it's a decision-making process. The goal is to develop thermal RES across the territory for the greatest number of people. So there is an order of priority that you can see on the approach on the right of the slide. And so the first question is that you ask yourself about sobriety and energy efficiency, and the goal is to reduce consumption as much as possible. Then the second idea is to put production means all together and also energy needs, and so to have collective solutions rather than individual solutions. So this is the second main idea. And then the third idea is that either at the level of a territory, so a city, or at the scale of a building, then there is the classification of RES. So first we go for the heat recovery, then we go for the geothermal energy or solar, And finally, we go to the biomass energy, because this is an energy that can be moved by trucks, which is not the case of other energies. So the goal of this idea is to optimize the use of all the energies that we have in Île-de-France, and that we use the one that cannot be relocated first, and then the one that can be relocated, such as biomass, that we use them at the last. So we use this process at the study level and the investment level, meaning that the agency I'm working for, ADEM, we're in charge of a fund called the HEAT Fund, that the states ask us to handle for them. And so we grant subsidies to cities and companies, and they have to follow this approach. This approach already has a couple of years. It's been in application since 2014, in fact, but it was the consequence of a regional plan in the years of 2010, 2012, between the state, the local state, and the local regional authorities. And so between themselves, they had a plan to do, which was put in place in 2012. And the idea of ENER Choix, called, I guess, Res Choice, was in this plan. And my agency, ADEM, we put it in this schematic that you can see. So the following slide, it's more explanation about the HEAT Fund, what it provides and to whom. Maybe just to remember that it was founded in 2009. And this year, so you have an idea of how much money it is for 2025. So it's 800 million euros. And at the end, we also have an idea of how many projects were founded. So more than 10,000 operations, but it can be an operation at a building level, and it can be an operation at a city level. So it can be, you have a very broad type of project that you can have. Okay, and then, so I gave you first the regional perspective, the HEAT Fund as a national tool. And on this slide, I put the national vision, because so at the beginning, ENER Choix was only really regional, like the other outside in other parts of France, they didn't apply this approach. But since 2024, so nearly 2 years now, it's in application everywhere in France. So a project, if they want to get a subsidy from the HEAT Fund, they need to follow it, which is kind of quite new for some project, because they were not used to that kind of approach before. And one of the main goal is really to have an attention of on the biomass, which needs to be really used only where you cannot do something else. This is one of the main issue. And also in Île-de-France, we have the chance of having a lot of geothermal energy that you can use at the building level, but that you can also use at the city level. So it can bring you 60 gigawatt hours for whole year, which is quite a lot. So you saw before the schematic at the regional level. So this is the national version of this schematic, meaning that in 2025, they decided to do to change, I guess, a bit the one that we did, so that everybody also could have some kind of an appropriation. So you can see kind of nearly the same one than before, except that it's not vertical, but it's more like horizontal. And there is also an addition that you can see at the right about aerothermal energy. So it's heating pump air and air to water, so that you can have. And finally, I put some kind of a synthesis to try to summarize what we did so in Ile-de-France and what happened then in France. So you can have the timeline when it began, what I said, so 2010, and the evolution that we made also, maybe because I didn't tell you, but so on the right you have the new schematic, which is quite new, but we had previous versions, and we also had like thinking about how to consider either like energy efficiency, but also some has like solar, so biogas, should we put it, should we not? And so we had some kind of evolution over the years that I tried to summarize. So on the top level, and on the lower level, you see more like the acceleration of what happened at the national level, and there is a new also a new evolution that is going to happen, and so that will apply for everybody in 2026, and which is in link to energy efficiency, is that we will cap subsidies for installation dedicated to a building at a reasonable consumption ceiling. That means that if a building has a high energy consumption, because there is no energy renovation work that's being carried out, then the subsidy will be reduced. So I guess like this approach at the building level, we can challenge the energy efficiency. When we talk to a city at the city level, it's more difficult because like the city is not in charge of all the buildings. They're in charge of their own, but then we ask them, okay, what do you do for the private building? Like, what do you do something? Do you do nothing? We challenge them a bit, but it's kind of tough because they're not the one that can do like the renovation for this type of building. So I guess that's it for me, like a quick overview of this approach.
Thanks a lot, Claire, and I would say also congratulations, because I think it's a very interesting example, and we see that there are already more than 10 years of experience with this approach. It has evolved over time, and that's also a very interesting example of replication, or should I say a scale up from the regional to the national level. So that's also I think very nice to see that experimentation and experience first done at the local or regional level can also help to improve the national schemes. And we'll see now that local heating and cooling plants are required all over Europe, if it could also be a source to improve national policy in the same way. And I have to say that the pragmatic approach that you have in ENEFIRST is also a very good source of inspiration for us in ENEFIRST Plus. So that was very welcome, the exchanges we already had on that. I hope that the participant can stay a bit longer, and the panelists as well. We can now turn to questions. There was Christos already answered the questions on operation and maintenance cost in the Q&A panel, so I encourage you to have a look at that if you are interested in this point. There was also a comment from Sam Thomas about the link between renovation plans and local and heating and cooling plants, and I think, Leah, in a sense, at the end of your presentation, you already partly answered that. So now let's welcome to the floor also Stan Mercier from the Joseph Stephan Institute, and who is, as I said at the beginning, he's leading the topic of heating and cooling in the concerted action for the energy efficiency directive. So I'm sure from the discussions you had with the other member states and the various topics you've covered along the way, you may be willing to share what challenges, what opportunities you see for the implementation of the principle in heating and cooling plants.
Yes, thank you for the invitation. I really enjoyed it in all presentation today. No, I think you stressed really important aspects which are key for our achievement of our goals, no, definitely. So yeah, I think what I really appreciate was this stress on linking heating demand in buildings first. So definitely we should first focus on the heating demand in the buildings and afterwards looking for the most optimal supply option also. Yeah, and this is, I think, something that we are facing all around Europe. Yeah, definitely building renovation is more complex and more time-consuming process, but definitely should be the first option or the first test in any case. Yeah, although it is complicated perhaps, but I think this is crucial because in the opposite, we are facing with really bad practice, installation of renewables in very inefficient buildings, and really facing a really huge challenge of how to make this process efficient, although it is renewable. No? So yeah, overall, I think we are still, our experience is that we are still facing big data gap in the member states and the knowledge on the local level. Yeah, so this is, I think, crucial to increase the data availability. The several tools were mentioned and the several databases. I think that is everything which can support this process. And and by all these activities, we can, I think, improve the planning processes, which are really important, especially if when we are trying to evaluate centralized solutions as waste heat utilization, district heating system compared to local to individual heating solutions. No? So definitely here, without good mapping and good geographical data support, we cannot be successful. Yeah, and of course, there's always a challenge to involve all local stakeholders in this very comprehensive process. Yeah, so yeah, all around, I think we are in a very dynamic process, and I'm sure that also your activities will bring us some new support, some new information, some new tools and new knowledge, which I'm sure will be helpful for doing this local energy planning more successfully.
Thanks a lot, Stan. And before I go to Margot, maybe a quick question from the presentation you've seen at the concerted action, and maybe also the interactions you have with the concerted action EPBD. Do you remind good example or good practices where there would be a joint assessment or the willingness to put together the comprehensive assessment and the long-term renovation strategy or similar matching between, let's say, the analysis on heating and cooling supply and building the energy demand in buildings?
So far, we have some linking with some common discussions, but perhaps not yet so focused now. So definitely, I think this is something that we should improve in the near future, because definitely when we are preparing action plans, these two actions should be somehow linked. No, not all of the we have two documents which are separate, but at the end we should assess them in an integrated way as you propose. No, so definitely there is still room for discussion and more cooperation between all people who are involved in EPBD and also EED and also RES directive. Yeah, so that's definitely a challenge.
Okay, so and I'm sure we will see a new examples, new good practice coming now that we are in the from transposition to implementation phase of the EED, which makes a nice transition to the question I would have to Margot. So the transposition deadline of the directive just passed last month. From the Commission side, based on what you reviewed in the NECPs and those are reporting by the member state, but also more generally, what type of changes you expect in terms of, I don't know, new policy measures, revisions of policy measures, changes in assessment, and so on.
Thanks a lot, Jean-Sébastien. First, let me congratulate for very good really setup of this event. It was very interesting because we had the example of applying energy efficiency first in strategic level national policy making, you know, with the Greek example, which of course needs to be comprehensive because policy making needs to be comprehensive and properly accounting all these societal externalities. And then we had also a very concrete example of applying energy efficiency first in investment decision, which needs to be pragmatic, clear, for, you know, for the exchange with the product promoters finally to guide them in their choices, and it must be, you know, actionable. And this is very much appreciated in this example of ENER choix from French Heat Fund, which is also a nice example of how these ideas, let's say, grown bottom up and evolved on this nice time schedule that was presented by Claire. So really, I see that it simply makes sense, and that's very positive in all of this, because if it's grown bottom up, it means that, you know, it makes sense to apply such a reasoning, such a method. And I see that it prioritizes both energy efficiency and resilience of system, because as we saw, there was also focus on, let's say, a I don't remember how it was called, the localizable sources first, and so it's really a very comprehensive method. So congratulations for the setup, because we should not have the same approach and different levels and for different purposes of energy efficiency first, because different type of decision-making processes require probably different methodologies, but both are absolutely valid. And for the local planning, I think we need to strike the right balance and find something in between that will be implementable for local decision makers, which are not always, you know, in the capacity to do a very complex calculation and modeling. On the other hand, we need that it comprehensively assess the whole local system. So that's the challenge. And yes, in the implementation, I would expect once moving now to transposition and implementation, that we will see more and more of this good practice from the ground, and we start seeing them, where local level, let's say, intelligence together with what is given as a steering from the national level brings the best result in terms of system efficiency and of course prioritization of demand side measures, but also the best possible supply options that consider local potentials and increase resilience and efficiency of our system as a whole. Because that's the nature of the energy transition, that it needs to be designed in the local conditions. It's decentralized by nature, and that's why the process needs also to have this bottom-up direction. So I don't know what to say more at this stage. We know that these provisions are not easy to be implemented in all municipalities. We will need to find the right system of support and work with member states that they also support municipalities with tools, with funding, of course, for implementation of these plans then, and with capacity building, probably regional support would be very important, because where we can pool intelligence and tools and help the smaller municipalities to drive the process, it will be very important. But it's for member states to put it in place. The Commission will certainly try to share the good practice as we already discussed, and there are many good tools which you shown also in your slides, so they need to be made known to everybody. And I think that in the next step, the Commission will think about something like guidance without providing one prescriptive recipe, but rather a range of tools and support methods for the local level to drive the process of planning, of heating and cooling planning. So yeah, thanks again for a very, very useful and insightful discussion today.
Thanks a lot, Margot, and that's nice also to hear positive notes and to see that we can look forward to the future with good expectations and future plans of guidance and replication as well. And as you referred to the ENER approach, I will now go to Claire. And first, there is a clarification question from Blazis in the Q&A panel. He asked if it means if the approach that referring to the slides where you have the 6 steps horizontally, that investor can select which step is most appropriate for each project, and then
No, so
Adam
it's
approves,
supposed.
or they need to justify how
No,
they
so
go
yeah,
along the way, right?
yeah, they're supposed to say how they go along the way. And as I was saying, I guess it depends, like if we're talking about a project at, just the local level, so at the building level, for energy efficiency, like reduction, it's not the same thing that if we are talking about, I don't know, 100 buildings that are going to be connected in a district heating network. So like the conversation, like the talking with the stakeholder will not be the same. If it's only a building, you can ask, okay, is a building new? Is it old? Did you do some renovation? But we go first to this step, and then we go along the way. It's only that emission reduction, if we are at the level of a city, we're not going to look at each building. We're going to ask the city, okay, can you give us some information about all the buildings that are going to be connected? What kind of information can you give us? Like, do you have like some kind of buildings where you have the information? Because in general, they have some information, not everything, but they have some. And then you do this step first. Then if you're at the building level, if it's a building that is owned by the city, we will ask, okay, you have a project on your school, for example, but the school is not alone. There are maybe other buildings, in the neighborhood. So maybe you could do something with the other building and not just look at the school. So you follow the process, and we ask that question because, for example, if it's a big school, maybe if you let the project go alone, like only for this the school, maybe it will be more difficult than to create a district heating network. So we follow the process, and sometimes we say no to some projects in terms of according the subsidy. So sometimes they do not do the project because they don't have the funding, and sometimes they do it anyway because they were already too advanced. But they remember for the next time. So bit by bit, like at the beginning in 2013, 2014, it was tougher than now. Now the approach is more well known, especially for the energy part, for the efficiency part. As I was saying, it can be a bit more difficult, but with the new, with what's going to happen in 2026, it may also bring some new progress, I guess.
And as you speak about the future, and we have seen in your last graph, that the provisions, the requirements related to energy efficiency have evolved over time and are, let's say, stronger bit by bit. One criticism we hear all the time when the requirements or special eligibility conditions are put on a subsidy scheme like the EAT fund, for example, is that it may reduce the number of projects, the amount of investment, because it makes it more difficult for the project holders. You have more than 10 years of experience with this approach. So can you tell us if that's also something you saw, or if the project holders were able to adapt to your requirement?
So yeah, it's true, especially when we're talking about a project only at the building level. When you're at the building level, then like so they have some time to choose, or sometime like I don't know, like their heating system is very old, and so they're telling you, okay, it's going to break down really quickly. I have to change that. I cannot think about the renovation, or the renovation it's too costly, and I cannot do both. So yeah, it's a challenge, and it's a talk that we have some time with them. So sometimes they go in the right direction, and they do further renovation, and sometimes they take it into account. And so you plan the heating system for the renovation that's going to happen. And we keep challenging them that even when it's all building, I don't know, I have an example, like a colleague of mine telling me about like a castle. So castle, you cannot do much, you know, because it's a castle, but you can still do something for the roof, for example. So it's like always keeping asking question, okay, maybe you cannot do like the outside, because like it's old and we need to keep it that way, but like the roof, at least you can do something about that. So do something about that, and then we can talk more about the heating system if you want the subsidy. This is the way that we manage. We try to use like the subsidies that can be granted to do something about the energy efficiency, but it's it's a conviction challenge.
Yes, well, that's also why your approach is interesting, because it's pragmatic, and I think that was clear from your presentation and from the experience you just shared. You explained very well that if the criteria are too strict, then you will exclude typically some project that could be interesting but a bit specific. So I think that's a very interesting experience. And we've seen from the French case the replication from, or the scaling up from regional to national level. Now going to the Greek pilot case, maybe we can discuss the replication between countries. Christos, with you. So you showed how the CBA can be aligned with the principle. And do you think that the approach you use could be replicated in other countries, or you see limitations on data or other limitations?
Yes, I think yes, obviously it is replicable and should be replicable. I think that standardization is the key. I fully agree with Margot that it is needed a very clear guidance note with specific step, not a chaotic document, specific steps, specific description of the input data. I think that all the countries have their own model because they have to forecast the evolution of the energy sector, so I think that all the countries have the data. Emphasis must be given on the externalities. I think that a table should be provided with the unitary metrics which can be used. It is important to have transparency, and if someone needs to incorporate in the analysis additional type of externalities, there are specific studies that must be conducted in order to justify, let's say, the quantification. It is, I like to be transparent, not to have, let's say, a discussion about which options, because it is not easy for the public authorities to have, let's say, the same approach. So for me, standardization is the key. I think that it can be achieved, and we can go for, let's say, for the next steps. And the simultaneous, let's say, combination of financial economic analysis, I believe strongly that can lead you to the identification of the appropriate tools. For example, such as in my cases, because we see that heat pumps have, let's say, a positive financial attractiveness and positive also economic. Yes, we have to promote, but not to give subsidy. Because, yes, the financial, let's say, performance is positive. Yes, we have to see additional policy measures to facilitate the access to financing, to provide soft loans. So it's a good opportunity to differentiate, let's say, the policy instruments, the tools that I have, because the public money are not sufficient in order to finance all the intervention and to improve the effectiveness.
Thanks a lot, Christos. And from your answer, I will note the point of transparency. And I think, okay, if we should remind two words from this workshop would be, okay, being pragmatic and transparent with the experience of the two of you. And I think that can be a good general guidance to implement the principle. We are a bit late, so I think I will have to stop the questions here. But maybe Stan, as you were a special guest expert for this workshop, maybe you want to say a concluding word for this panel.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. No, I would really express my I'm really glad to hear that we can do all this work also in more simplified manner, which I think was demonstrated on the French case. I really liked more that they definitely should not complicate too much. The Greek contribution is more comprehensive, is more advanced, is more systematic. But at the end, we should have a knowledge to decide that this is crucial. Also, definitely we can use different approaches, which will bring us toward the good choices and the good decisions. Now, this is, I think, the most important. So, yeah, I'm glad to hear that we are working on a good solutions. Now, so I hope we will also be capable to implement them in our local environment, which is always specific, which is always we need something which is designed for our needs. But to be inspired by such a presented approach is definitely, I think, something very valuable for us. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Stan. And for the ones who want to continue the discussion on CBA, that is a kind of prerequisite to draw your hierarchy that you can use as shown by Claire for the ENER approach. I think the two are very complementary, and in the design of subsidy schemes or other policies. You can register for the workshop that is planned on the 17th of December. I put again the link in the chat. And with that, I thank all our speakers and panelists, Stan as well. So big thanks to Margot, Marco, Christos and Claire and Stan. And I wish you a nice end of the afternoon, and we'll keep in touch for the implementation of the Energy Efficiency First principle. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Goodbye.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.